you doing? Coach Dawn Staley, Cherri, Greg, and Avi Wolfman-Arent here.
Cherri, Avi, nice to meet y'all.
Nice to meet you too. We're so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, congratulations on the book Uncommon Favor. So we wanted to start the conversation by talking about basketball because in the first line of your book, you go right there. Basketball is in that first sentence. Do you remember the moment you knew that basketball had you locked in?
Probably as far as I can remember, 8 years old. Like 8 years old is as far back my memory would take me, but I know I played before then. But by 8, it was pretty clear that I was pretty good at basketball. But I did play all different types of sports. Mm-hmm. Football, like tackle football, like baseball, like softball, like ran track, all of it.
But it was always basketball, like you said, that made you feel like your skin fit.
Yeah, it was basketball is second skin to me. Yeah. Like it felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And when it's like that, you know, some people can run from that. Some people can run from that, and some people can run towards it. For me, I ran towards it, and it's been very rewarding for me.
Yeah. You were always like a quiet person off the court, but a leader on the court. What was it about basketball, the language of it, that you felt enabled you to speak in a way that you couldn't use language to do?
I mean, I don't know. I think part of it is the order in which I am in my family, which is the youngest. Sorry, y'all. Oh my God, Champ.
Champ's in the book.
My
right?
God, y'all.
Champ.
Champ. My goodness. Champ has a chapter in the book too.
Yep.
Obviously, he's not known to be that pushy, but he's being pushy right now. So I think just being the youngest and not being able to have a perspective in my household because they didn't really listen to the youngest. I think when I got on the court, it was a place in which I felt like, and I didn't speak a whole lot either. It was like my game spoke. Like when people saw me play, they spoke. They cheered. They were astonished that a girl could play as well as I could play. And that is kind of what I was chasing. Not necessarily playing to the crowd, but sometimes when you're on your journey, there are things that happen. There are people in your life that really inspire you and they give you stamina to continue. And it was the people in my neighborhood, the guys in my neighborhood, once we got over that step of, you know, those old cliches, you should be in the kitchen. So all that, you know, once we got past that, I was welcomed in a way that they protected me.
Yeah.
In essence, they were my game.
Yeah.
I was pretty special. And to have that type of support, especially from the people in your neighborhood, they wouldn't let anybody or anything like interfere with what they projected as, you know, my future.
Yeah.
And my future in basketball.
Yeah.
You mentioned you're the youngest of 6, raised in the Raymond Rosen housing project. Excuse me, youngest of 5
Yep.
in the Raymond Rosen housing projects, and in North Philadelphia. And I love the way that you wrote about your neighborhood in the book. I wanted to read an excerpt. You say, "It may have been rough around the edges, but we took care of each other. We looked out for each other. We planted flowers. We cultivated joy," talking about your block. I wonder what you want people to take away from this book about your neighborhood and neighborhoods like it.
Here's the thing. When you grow up in the projects, if you're not from that, if you don't know anything about the projects, if you just listen to people describe, what growing up in poverty looked like in the housing projects where, all the utilities are free. It's low rent. You would think it was probably the worst place that you could raise a family. And when I think it's direct opposite. Like, I am who I am today because of where I grew up, and not just my mother and my father and my household, because they were disciplinarians, but the entire block, the entire neighborhood looked after each other. No adult would allow any young person to get out of line. And everybody had the authority, to discipline. And no parent would ever argue with that.
Yeah.
Like, never. So I think, there are so many gems in growing up in the projects. There's, my father was a handyman. Like, we didn't, if we had a plumbing issue, we didn't have to call a plumber in or call the maintenance people in the, in the projects. He would fix it himself.
Yeah.
If there were, any, he made fences. Like, when you live in the projects, you try to make sure that you have, because everything is such a community that you want to feel like some parts of it is yours.
Yeah.
So my father would build a fence that actually deterred people from coming down in front of our house. They had to go around, in order to get to our house. Like, who are we to do that? But he built it himself. There were fences around our lawns. My father built all the fences in our block. My father was a mechanic. So anytime anybody's car, wasn't working, he was there. Like,
it sounds like the neighborhood anyone would want to grow up in.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, there's the rough parts of the neighborhood too that raised me. Like, I know, because of where I grew up, there isn't anything that anybody could throw at me that like, I'm unshakable when it comes to that. Yeah. Like, there's not a big problem that's going to shake my ability to resolve the issue. Like, I'm my best. I'm my best in worse situations. And that's all because of where I grew up.
Yeah. I want to ask you about your mom, because Miss Estelle, who you talk about in multiple places in the book, was a strong woman. She was a faithful woman. And you kind of start by telling us about her and the lesson she taught you. And that number one lesson was discipline. Can you talk about your mom a little bit, and why this was the ultimate lesson that you think helped with your trajectory?
Now I call it this, because one of my life mottos is the disciplined person can do anything. Like, if I could have had those words to describe growing up where I grew up and under my mother's guidance, it would be just that. Obviously, my mother was a faithful woman. She was she worked in the vineyard. And if you grow up in the church, working in the vineyard is you're on the usher board, right? You're on the mother board, right? You got the deaconesses, you got to cook for after service. You got all these duties, right? My mother found a way to do all of those things. And she didn't spare the rod either. Like, my mother was a disciplinarian in every sense. If we came home late, from, just being outside and we missed curfew, you better duck quickly, because she'll throw a shoe at you. She got the extension cord. She got a switch. Like, I don't know. Y'all probably too young to know about switches.
Well, I read about it in the book.
You read about it? Yes. You read about the switches?
I read about it.
Yeah, they do.
They hurt. Mm-hmm. They hurt bad. You take a branch off of a thin branch off of a tree, cut it, pull the leaves off. It's a weapon. Like, you can't do those things nowadays. But it was that, like, I feared my mother. Like, I feared disappointing her.
And you were a natural rule follower, right? So there was some nice meshing there, I suppose.
Yes. it was instilled in us.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't birthed from being a rules follower. No one is, it's the training of it was called parenting. But super strong woman. Like my mother had the strength of 10 men. And when I say that, physically, mentally, spiritually, she would not allow anything to deter her from raising her kids the right way, from going to church every Sunday, even if it caused my parents to be unequally yoked. She was going to do that. She knew where her strength was coming from. And it takes a strong-willed person really to choose God over everything.
Yeah.
And that was my example.
Because your dad was not a churchgoer.
No, not my dad was a partier. My dad, my dad did a lot of things, resourceful. I mean, my dad was a numbers runner.
Yeah.
That's you can make on a big day. Now, he did share a little bit of that with us, not very much of it, because he was pretty tight with his money, pretty tight, and I mentioned this in the book where, my mother and my father would take turns giving us our allowance. Each week, my mother had 1 week, my father had the next week, and they just would, alternate. Well, sometimes my father would intentionally forget to leave the money.
Right.
Yeah, like we're looking around like, where's the money? And then my mother would call back home after she left for work and said, "Did you guys get the money?"
Right.
Yeah. And we're like, "No." And she had hidden places where she left money. Go we had this little like entertainment bar like thing in piece of furniture. Go lift the, go open the third drawer under 2 books inside on the 37th page. Like she would leave money all over the house because she just wanted to make sure we had everything that we needed.
Yeah.
And I may have mentioned this, but my mother sacrificed her needs to give her kids our wants. And that's the type of woman that I grew up, and being my hero.
Yeah. One thing, your mom was a strict disciplinarian, but one rule that you often broke was the curfew because you was playing basketball. So I want you to take us to your neighborhood back in the day when you was playing. And one of the things you did was you would play with the boys all the time. And you actually say in the book you did not see a gender difference in basketball. And that you, as a young girl, wanted to play in the NBA. You didn't see the difference. You was like, I'm about to ball up with all of y'all. And I want to know, what was the moment that you realized that there was a difference?
Well, I would say this, growing up where I grew up, it was an anomaly for a girl to play basketball just with the guys. Mm-hmm. It was uncommon, it wasn't something that, that people saw every day. So, you got to get through those old cliches of you need to be in the kitchen somewhere, go put on the skirt. I heard all of that. Like it was really unoriginal, right? Yeah, it's unoriginal. Like, mm-hmm. But then when I started I thought I was taking basketball seriously, the moment I picked it up, but it took a while for other people to take me seriously when it came to basketball. So when they started taking me seriously is when, I felt like I arrived, because you want the people in your neighborhood to respect you. Like that's the ultimate thing. And growing up in the hood is respect from your peers. Like you want that. You want that. Like you don't, and you want to earn it. Like I had to earn it. I probably had to earn it more so than a guy. Because I had the gender tag against me, like you're the only female. So I arrived when I was probably one of the first 10 that was picked to play. I'm from North Philly, and if you think about North Philly, if anybody thinks about North Philly, they probably the first initial thought is bad neighborhood, like bad place to grow up. And I'm like, North Philly is the place to be. You know, it is where you can learn some incredible life lessons that will carry you. Like I am as tough can be.
Yeah.
Because of where I grew up. Like I am, like there isn't, again, I'll say it again, like there isn't anything that I don't think I can accomplish. Like, and I'm so happy that I'm able to have written a book to express it, because I say it all the time. I say it on the stages of being at the Olympic Games. I'm from North Philly, like North Philly's own. And to be able to put it in a book where not just a handful of people can read about it, they can really feel and take this journey with me. And it's normal. Like, it's not, I know I've had a storied career when it comes to basketball, you know, but it's written as such that it applies to any profession, anything that you've gone through or are going through.
Yeah.
I do think it resonates with, like, normal people. I live my life as a normal person, although there's some stardom and there's some, you know, name recognition. But at the end of the day, I lead a very simple life.
Yeah. I love that. And I think about the edge that North Philly gave you. I mean, you had a lot of success at Dobbins High School. Shout out to Dobbins. They named the gymnasium after you. That must have been an honor. And then you go outside of your comfort zone. You go to UVA, where your edge, your North Philly edge, was so sharp. You was like slicing people. Can you talk about like that transition coming out of your comfort zone in North Philly, having to, you know, then go to college and then see the world and with that edge? How did you sort of like calibrate yourself? Talk about the journey of like self-calibration when you come out of a place like North Philly that taught you so many lessons, but then you have to learn different ones as you grow and expand.
Yeah, I mean, UVA, I love UVA, you know, as a choice of college. But I didn't really know, like, when you're on your visit at college, you're there for 48 hours and you spend a lot of time with the team and less time on the grounds, as we call them at UVA, the grounds.
Not the campus, the grounds.
The grounds.
The grounds,
I like
yes.
that.
So once you're there, you know, for me, I'm like, you know, I've never been around so many white people. Like, North Philly in my neighborhood is like 102% Black, right? And I had a hard time acclimating, especially academically. I just didn't think I was prepared for, although I was a really good student in public school, going to UVA and the rigors of the academics was challenging. And I felt myself just not doing well and almost being kicked out of UVA. And I had to go in front of a dean and fall on the sword for her to allow me to stay. And I didn't do that. Like, you know, I was still very shy.
Yeah.
And sitting in front of the dean, you know, was very intimidating to me. And it was, you know, I didn't give eye contact. I didn't speak up for myself. I didn't do anything besides sit there and listen. And then a word came out of her mouth that I just strongly disagreed with. She said, "You're going to have to conform to the ways we do things here at UVA." And I'm like, conform? Like, you know, it's a nothing word to me today, right? It's nothing because our players have to conform to the way we do things here at South Carolina and our program. So it's just a normal word for me today. But back then, I'm from North Philly. Like, we don't conform. Like, we don't this is who we are. Take us or leave us. And if my bubble was talking, that's what I would have said. But my bubble wasn't talking. I wasn't saying anything. I just sat there and listened. And the dean took that as I wasn't very serious about my dire situation. So my coach had to come back in and clean it up and find a way for me to stay. And then what I did was I just started competing in the classroom. Like I started tapping into the very thing of who I was as an athlete. Like there wasn't anything that I wouldn't do to beat my basketball opponent. Like if it required me to take extra shots, I would do that. If it required me to watch more film, I would do that. If it required me to sit on the bench, I would do that. If it required me to just be less of a shooter, more of a passer, I would do that. I would figure out a way. And I had, game plans to do that. With academics, when I was not doing well, I just chalked it up of not doing well. I didn't compete. But the moment I started competing, like, I'm not going to let this person get a better score than I do. I'm not going to let this person outstudy me. And once I start acclimating and conforming to that in that way and competing in that way, I instantaneously became a better student in the classroom. So I thank the dean for giving me that grace to grow up and to learn and to conform to the ways in which they do things at UVA. And now I'm a graduate of UVA, and no one can take that away from me.
Yeah, a proud graduate at that. Mm-hmm. And, it's so interesting, that meeting you describe in the book where you basically don't say a word. And now to compare that to you now, mm-hmm. you are a coach. You are plenty loquacious. Mm-hmm. I am curious when that switch went off for you, where it's like, I could use my voice, my actual voice, to, first of all, advocate for myself and to uplift the people around me.
Yeah, I mean, life, life's, you know what I'm saying?
Life.
It does, right? Like I'm 18 years old going through that.
Yep.
My 18-year-old self to now, I would say I probably reached that point, well, probably before I was 50. But once I turned 50, it's like life clears up.
Really?
It really does. It does. It clears up.
Something about 5-0.
Interesting.
Right, something about it. It gets you ready for 5-0. Like you start to figure things out, in your 20s, right? And then your 30s hit, you're like, okay, well, this is all right living, right? This is all right, but you still, you would still take some hits somewhere along the lines. And then 40s was fun, right? And then you hit your 50s, like, okay, that didn't sound right. So it's a look, sound, feel type of thing. If something looks, sounds, or feels off, I'm going to address it. If it looks, sounds, or feels great, I'm going to encourage it. And that is kind of how I navigate life. Yeah. Like it's that simple.
Yeah. I think about your North Philly roots and who you are with that edge from North Philly. And I also think about the lesson you learned at UVA and then the lessons you kept learning, because there were some losses you had. You didn't make the 92 Olympic team. You missed a shot that would have won the title when you were in college. You had to come home for a moment and work in retail. And there was so many, we had to throw that one in there. We were both like, whoa.
I was just, my jaw dropped when I read that.
We were like, Dawn Staley worked in retail?
But you were the best player, the collegiate player in the country. And just to give people a sense of where women's basketball was at that time, after your senior year, you come back to Philly and you work a retail job initially, because you can't get a job playing pro ball. You do eventually. But I mean, first of all, to remember, where was the retail job? And also just take us to your mindset in that moment.
Yeah. Now, here's the background of that story was my mother, who was cleaning houses for some rich people, right, who owned the store. I didn't have a job. So she was like, "You want a job? I can ask." I forget his name. Well, cool dude. He was a cool dude. And he got me a job at, I forget the name of the store, but it was at Franklin Mills outlets.
Okay.
It was at the outlets. It was
Yep.
at the outlets.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I worked there for about 3 weeks. Right. And I'm still am a heck of a folder. Like I didn't mind folding the clothes. I mean, I would run from the customers now. I wasn't one of those greeters where, can I help you? No, I'm running from the customers. I'll go behind them after they looked at a clothing item, and I will go fold it back or put it nicely on the hanger. And then, the manager of the store, because the owner hired me, he basically said, give her a job. I was a college graduate. She thought I was trying to move up to the managerial position. And I'm like, no, this is just a filler, a job filler for me. And then I got the check after working 3 weeks. I don't know. I think it was $227. And I'm like, for 3 weeks?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I immediately put in my letter of resignation. And I said, I'm just going to work on my game. I just put the heat on my agent to find me a job. But at that time, you know who my male counterpart was?
Christian Laettner, I'm guessing.
No. Larry
Johnson. Okay.
Wow.
UNLV.
Yeah, he got $80 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you were basically looking for a job, and you get one in, it's Segovia is the name of the town in Spain?
Segovia, Spain, yes.
Man, Segovia, Spain in the early 90s. Did you speak any Spanish?
No.
Not a lick?
Not a lick. I spoke basketball.
Yeah.
And that was understood. That was understood.
But the lessons you had to learn, because you seem to thrive when you are down. So you had to go work retail. They told you couldn't come to the Olympics because you didn't have enough international experience.
Yep.
And it's like you just dug in and got it done. Like, what is that switch that you have in you that when you don't get something that you tried for, when a lot of people stay down, it just seemed like it just made you work harder?
I'm drawn to challenges. Like, I really am drawn. Like, my second nature is to be challenged. And I think when you're over 50, you have reflection, right? So when I reflect on my career and my life, every time that I've had some type of disappointment or some type of failure, or some type of loss, it seemed to be what I really needed in my life at that time. You don't really understand it when you're going through it, but now that I reflect on it, I'm able to come out of it because I forced myself, and every situation, whether we win or lose, we decompress and we talk about the journey and how we got there and how we got the results that we got. We just lost to UConn this year, in the national championship game, right? So am I upset? Yeah, I don't like to lose, but at the same time, I know what a dominant team looked like, and UConn was that this year. Mm-hmm. Like, I know what we need to work on and where our pitfalls were. So, we've done some things in this off season to help that. So if we're ever put in that situation again, we can right that wrong. But again, now that I'm over 50 and I've been through some things, I understand that this is a failure, this is a loss, this is a disappointment. But how we come back from those things throughout, like, historically speaking, I like our chances moving forward. I do.
You mentioned the pay inequity between you and your male counterpart when you graduated from UVA. Mm-hmm. And I get the sense that pay inequity really pisses you off at a core mm-hmm. level. You talk about it in the book in negotiating your own contract at South Carolina. But I wanted to bring up, maybe on the bright side of this conversation, there was a piece just came out in the New York Times about one of your former players, one of your great stars, A'ja Wilson, getting a shoe deal. It took a long time, but that is now, and the story is about sort of how that evolved and the fact that it took longer than people wanted it to take. And yet it's also arrived for her. I'm curious what you make of her having a signature shoe, which is a huge thing in the basketball world. And what lessons you take away from the journey it took to get there. You're watching from the outside as an observer, right? But that journey to get to that place for her, because she is probably the best player in the world.
Well, I'll say this. Like, I knew before the public knew that she was getting a signature shoe, right? A'ja knew before the public knew that she was getting a signature shoe, right? So a signature shoe takes at least a minimum of 18 months, a minimum. So you don't want to tell people you got a signature shoe coming out and they got to wait 2 years to get the shoe.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
But it goes to show that the power of the push, like the public push, people wanted to know why A'ja didn't have a shoe already, when the shoe was already being in the process of her creating it and talking with the designer. I couldn't say anything, but I knew the process. But the public made Nike come out probably a lot sooner than they wanted to come out to say she got the shoe, right? Just like I think Caitlin Clark's got a shoe that's going to come out, So now we're at a point where, the Caitlin Clark's fans want her shoe to come out. Well, she's probably got another year before the shoe comes out because it takes about 2 years for the whole production of it. So, quietly people are working behind the scenes. And when you don't know, you don't know. So you complain. Yeah. But the shoe is going to be, for A'ja, I'm happy. Like, it's what she deserves, is what she's earned, is what the demand for her shoe is. Like, it sold out within 5 minutes of being being released. I was in Vegas and I went to the Nike store. I bought a whole lot of stuff. There wasn't right. I had to beat the crowd in there, but then by the time I turned my back, the whole rack is gone.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get a special shipment of the A'ja?
It seemed like you should have had it delivered.
Yeah, come on now.
Come on.
That's true. But no, I want to support. Like, I put my credit card down and I'm like, I want to support A'ja in this way. So I mean, it's only right that we give the people what they deserve to get. And it's not often that you're able to get that. So when it's signature equity, if it's pay equity, if it's whatever equity, women should not have to take a back seat to any of it. Like, give us our worth. Give us our worth. Like, like you have friends, right? Your best friends. Like, you would do anything for your best friend. You would do anything. And like, if an employer has a star employee, you should want to do anything for that employee. Yeah. And that, if that's pay equity, or beyond that, not even equity, like or equal. It doesn't have to be equal. It has to be equitable. Whatever it is, that employee deems is appropriate for her, then give her that. Yeah. If it's the money, then give her that. Don't make her wait, like they made me wait 5-6 months to get, that type of pay increase. But you do have to just hang in there and stand on principle.
Yeah. I want to ask, first of all, shout out to you because in 1999, you became the first Black woman basketball player to get her own signature Nike. You had the Air Zoom S5, which is a really cute shoe, by the way. It was super fly. I wonder if they're going to ever bring that back. Would you have a new shoe? But I want to ask you about standing on business when it came to pay equity. You decided that this last contract, this was going to be the time that you were going to stand up. What was it like, sort of like, using your voice in that way and knowing that it could have a ripple effect, and it would have a ripple effect throughout the entire, sport and athletics generally?
Well, I actually asked for equal pay in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So that would put me still over 50, right? I'm over 50, and something just didn't seem right, because here I am on a national stage. There was a discrepancy on in 2021 at the Final Four, actually the NCAA tournament, men's and women's, where the men's tournament was held in Indianapolis. Our tournament was held in San Antonio. One of the women players made a post comparing the weight rooms,
Yeah.
right? And she put that post out, and it sent everybody into a tizzy. And then we were able to put out a letter, an open letter, just stating that we strongly disagree with what's happening. So I'm fighting the fight on the national level. I come back home after being in the Final Four, and I'm like, we're at a point where it was time for me to renegotiate. And I'm like, now is the time. If I can fight for, equity in our game on a national level, I certainly can fight for it, and on the local level where I work. And I asked my agent to stand down, because I didn't think he could do it, because he had been through so many other negotiations that they get to a place where, they created a friendship or relationship, and our AD would get to a point where he's just like, okay, we don't have any money, right? And then the agent he's going to say, they don't have any more money. And I could say, okay, well, we'll take it. Well, I didn't want him to negotiate, because I didn't want to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I hired a local lawyer who was connected with pretty much the decision makers and who was going to allow this to happen. And because I did that, it took about 5 to 6 months in order for them to agree on the terms. And then stuff in between, I would have conversations with the AD. He would call me about something else, and then somehow the negotiations would come up in our conversations. And I'm like, okay, well, he was like, you're going to leave that much money on the table? And I was like, well, no, I'm not going to leave it on the table, but we're not far off from where I need to be. So if you can put that amount on the table, you can put a couple of dollars more, and then we can be done with it. And it's good for all of us.
And you did not relent.
Really,
yeah, you did not relent.
Yeah, because the fight wasn't really for me. It really wasn't. I mean, I was just a vessel, really. It wasn't I was making a lot of money, but I'm looking at my male counterpart who hadn't had the type of success that we've had. Like not nearly, not half as good, not a quarter as good of seasons that we've had. And I'm just like, he gets a pay increase more than me. Not just the salary, it's just the pay increase of his contract was up, and he got, I don't know how much it was, but it was more than what I got. And I'm just like, I think that's embarrassing to me, for that to happen. And I didn't want to sit around and think, that I'm okay with it. So we fought for it, and we got it. And I do think it was a great thing for our athletics department, our university, the state of South Carolina, to be out front and giving equal pay where it was deserved.
Going back to that headline I brought up earlier from the mid-'80s about how you may save the sport, and you were in 8th grade at the time, I feel like there has been this narrative about women's basketball for decades, that it's always on the precipice, it needs to be saved. And I think the question is, have we finally passed the tipping point where we're not talking about saving the sport, we're talking about a thriving sport that is a commercial powerhouse. Not just Asia Wilson, not just Caitlin Clark. We got Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, whoever you want to name. Like, have we reached that point in your mind where you're like, this is not going anywhere. This is a commercial and athletic force that no one needs to save anymore?
Yeah, we're busting at the seams, women's basketball. Like, it is in high demand. Like, I wish we could get out of our television deal. I wish we could stand on our own as a sport, and we're shown our true value. Like, our true value is not being valued, because the TV deal is women's basketball, and all the other Olympic sports are included in that number. So we don't know what our true number is. And I do think, the ESPNs of the world and the decision makers of women's basketball knew they needed to lock us in that type of deal, because if they didn't, they would have to be dishing out a lot more.
Yeah.
But it's coming. I do. There's no turning back, because I think we've been held back for a long time, like a long, long, long time, when I never get this. Like, it almost seems like our money isn't green. Like, women's basketball money isn't green, because we don't want to, we're pouring resources in, but we also are being held back, and not given our true value. So at some point we will. At some point we will be valued in a way, and I do think we can have as lucrative deals, salaries, resources, and all that comes with being, a great product.
And I got to ask you this question, because, the WNBA has been expanding a little bit, and Philadelphia, there's been rumors percolating about us getting a team one day. And, the dream coach would be you. Miss North Philly herself. I mean, would you ever, I know you love South Carolina and you've been very successful there, but would you ever consider at some point, if we got a team here, being
of
in
coaching?
Philly? Of coaching a WNBA
or
team
ownership,
in Philly, or ownership, something.
That's what we're talking. I want to be ownership. I don't necessarily want to be on the sideline. I think my true passion is for young people on the collegiate level.
Yeah,
I'm here to make sure our league is in a safe place to just harness and hone the skills of collegiate players. So when they go to the next level, when they go to the WNBA, then our league is in a good place. But I think ownership is the place to be.
And you would do that. You would be interested in that in Philly.
I would definitely be interested in ownership.
All right.
Real quick,
Definitely.
Do you have the voice, the line, the connections to be part of those negotiations to get a team to Philly? Is your voice in that room? Do you want your voice to be in that room?
Yeah, I've had some conversations with people.
All right.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed.
We'll leave it at that.
We want this team here so bad, and we'll leave it there.
Okay. We got to get our sixes going too now.
That is another hour of conversation.
Yes, right.
We would have to do. It starts with that draft lottery coming up for sure. But thank you so much, Dawn Staley. The book is Uncommon Favor, and it's a great read. And I have to say, if you live in Philadelphia, that first part of the book is just meat for you, because there's so much about Philly. Philadelphia in the 1980s that just takes you right there. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right.